G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff, Ukraine War Update for the 8th of September 2025. I'm your host, the author, David Applegate. And before I begin, I'd like to thank the patrons and other patrons, book buyers and other fans who help make this channel possible. And thank you for your contributions. Now, the Ukraine war does continue. I think every news service has let you know that Russia has engaged in the biggest drone attack since the beginning of the war. Now, I've heard this many times. There was the big drone attack in 22 when Ukraine started it off with drones. On Moscow, followed up by Russian missile attacks on multiple cities, and since then that set the benchmark where there'd be, I think it was like 38 missiles, which is not much if you say, look at how many the US launched just from the Missouri in 3 days on Iraq. I think this is why it's hard to compare wars. Because the intensity, the amount of firepower, you don't know the amount of ordnance used per day. So it's hard to compare the two. But if you go by casualties alone, they're nowhere near each other. Ukraine, unfortunately, is an unfortunate war, but that little brightness spark is the fact that at least it's a low intensity war compared to previous engagements, though it is still a tragedy. But Russia has been accused of not being serious about a ceasefire. Yet people continually forget that Zelensky hasn't met with Putin yet and refuses. He keeps coming up with excuses, and Europe is desperately scrambling to try and put a deal together, but Zelensky's having none of it. Now, of course, he'll be eventually dragged kicking and screaming to the peace table, but not before Europe and the others try to push Trump around to show that we're not a vassal state. Yeah, shut up, vassal. What is known? Well, for the last 48 hours, the Ukrainian parliament building, the monument to Homo erectus, is slightly damaged by fire. We know there was fighting. We know there were drone attacks. We know that it's estimated that there were over 800 drones. But there are only 13 missiles, and of course the majority of damage is unshown. But of course Ukraine will always say, we shot a lot of them down, the rest only hit civilians, and they only kill babies. And the majority of people seem to believe this, despite the fact they repeat it over and over again. Ukraine also attacked Russia's pipeline to Hungary and Slovakia when told not to, because they consider a legitimate military target, then complain that Russia attacks their energy infrastructure. Because Zelensky's such a fair-minded and even-handed man. Not. However, in a rare picture, we do actually have a strike.
Ukrainian authorities say Russian forces carried out the biggest attack of the war overnight, launching more than 800 drones and at least 13 missiles at targets across the country. The Ukrainian military says it shot down most of the drones, but many clearly got through.
Yeah, it claimed, at least they used the word claims, that they shot down many. No, they shot down most, but then the media says clearly many got through. Exactly.
Yet another attack. The two city districts of Darnitsky and Sviatoshinsky have suffered the most. We are now in...
Russian tactics are increasingly using swarms of cheap Geran 2 drones in an attempt to swamp Ukrainian defences.
They're not big, so the damage isn't big. those little drones, they could probably blow up a car. Probably set fire to a house. They would definitely kill a few people. But they're small. My guess is they are deployed a couple of kilometres outside the city by airborne drone carriers. We've yet to see that such technology. It's only estimate. But these, maybe 60 kilometres, so they could be launched from the border and hit Kiev. But 2,000? I don't believe it. I think
1,000 kilometers. The drones are relatively slow, but when they're launched in large enough numbers, Ukrainian gunners can't shoot them all down.
Yeah. But that's the thing. These are just carbon fibre fuel tanks or batteries with a propeller. But given the size, it's only got an explosive the size of a man's head. Military experts will tell you that, I'm not sure if this is true or not, but if you double a hand grenade, you're only 3 times the power. If you put 4 hand grenades in, that's only, 3 times the power. You're not massively... Explosives don't stack well because they tend to disrupt each other. So the more explosive you have, you may do a lot of damage, but it's not like if all 500 drones hit separately, they would do far more damage than one 500 kilogram warhead. So because one missile can be shot down, it's easier to send 500 drones and still get the same result, because even if half are shot down, you're still doing more damage. You're wasting the enemy resources. That's the point of bombing. The destruction is secondary because they know they can rebuild. It's about the resources, how much damage and how and if you can damage Ukraine faster than they can repair, that's the point of war. I think people forget the point of war. I think most people think it's just about the killing. No, it's about getting your way. And Russia is using the economic damage of pinpricking, which is what Ukraine has been doing to them for some time with economic sabotage. But Russia's economy, still growing, by the way, is estimated to be about 10 years before it's out of debt. So this is why Ukraine feels confident, because the Russian economy is in a bad position. But remember, they've been in a bad position for 20 years and have slowly been depleting their one of the things they did under communism, however, shouldn't be held against them. However, Zelensky's not a Christian with Christian values. He doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. He wants revenge. And he wants to punish Putin for the sins of the past. Ukraine, this is the problem with most non-Christians. You look at Facebook, you look at Twitter, how they want to punish Russia. But all you're doing is pushing Russia into, it's like that meme, guy standing in the middle. The left says, I don't agree, that meme, the guy in the middle. The left just comes up to him and pushes him over and then says, why did you side with the right? Well, this is what the right is doing to Russia. And the left, they're both ganging up on Russia because they want to tear Russia apart. Each side wanting to tear, Europeans want to cripple and break up Russia so they can dominate it. And America wants to weaken Russia so that it doesn't be a threat to Europe. Now, the American position may be a bit more palatable. And definitely Putin doesn't want to be just another vassal state of China. But at the same time, you have India and Brazil, and you have a lot of countries who want to trade with everybody, but at the same time, they're secretly working for their interests. So I'm not saying that Russia is good or bad. I'm just saying, from the position of Russian perspective, Europe is behaving like a belligerent. They basically don't care what the Russians want or feel. It's like Prime Minister Tut here. He doesn't care about the people of Russia or Ukraine or England for that matter. He only cares the portfolio of what the Bank of England tells him to do. And the Bank of England works for the WEF. And they're just bored wankers playing, bankers. They're just bored little hats playing their silly little economic games because the world for far too long has given them all the money in the world to play their silly games. Now, I think this is a misleading headline. Trump, however, has announced that he is ready to put sanctions on, but he's only withholding them. He's put targets on the table. He'll make a decision on when phase 2 what it will tell and when they will start, whether or not, But you can't say Trump put a deadline on Putin, and Zelensky just sits in his chair, folds his arm, and says, "Well, I'll run out the clock on a meeting, and America will sanction Putin." Well, that's exactly what Zelensky's doing, but Trump isn't falling for it. But Zelensky is pushing for sanctions. But before we get to the rest of the stories, let's take a look at the map. It was quite a devastating day for Ukraine, both on the battlefield, politically, and economically, with the amount of economic damage, with a large number of drones getting through. But politically, more countries are questioning Ukraine. Ukraine is unpopular. Yes, they tried to capitalize on sympathy for a Ukrainian refugee. That quickly got shot down. Her death had nothing to do with the war. It has everything to do, and it's got nothing to do with America. It's got everything to do with the criminality of a minority group in America who should, by all rights, just fuck off back to where they came from, since they consider the country such an evil that they feel in. But that's not. The thing is, everything that's ruining America right now is the crime, and the people who commit the crime are the ones claiming to be the victims. But what we have is Russia fighting in Russian buffer zones through most of Battlefield North, and here we have for more fighting in Kupiansk. No discernible advance since for a week. We have fighting here north of Lyman, with Russia making steadfast advances into Novolinska and Drupny, still stuck at Nizhny, still stuck north of Seversk, where east of Seversk fighting has resumed, south as well. Now, north of Chevyshyar, there's fighting with little bits of territorial gains, but not much. But Chevyshyar itself and south of Chevyshyar, there is very little. This expansion is just open field. It is still an expansion, but it's not much. Same here. It's although they have overrun in Ukrainian positions, these are positions that have little significance, but it does allow Russia to get closer to Krovinska eventually. First, of course, they have to deal with the mines, poor roads, and of course all the and harassment from the Ukrainians, because they're now in range of the bigger guns and rockets further back in the second and third lines of defence, because these towns do have land defences, usually mostly, but they have, as well, front and back. They're encirclements, basically. What's it called? Is it a round hill castle? Basically, they're German fortress cities. You look at Ukrainians' Neptune. It's a V1 rocket. There is so much about Ukraine which is taken from, the Trident is Greek, but most of it's taken from Germanic. But they're not a Germanic people. All right, so fighting in the north, very little gains. Though there is fighting in Middlegard, which has happened before. They still have not overrun these two positions. Still fighting here into Pavlovsk, fighting on the road to Pavlovsk, fighting here in the south. Fighting here has been going on for some time. The Ukrainian counteroffensive is being pushed back, but there's still some areas of, still a lot to go. That is still fighting. Ukrainians desperate to try and stop the Russians from reaching Miriod, but they may have to choose between the two, and of course that'll ultimately fail. One of the things that will hurt the Ukrainians is when the Russian forces here meet up. They will hold position, sweep them out, which will allow troops to be redeployed along a shorter front line and take the Ukrainians here on better. It's been a breakthrough here in the south or west. The Ukrainian offensive has been completely annihilated from a few days ago, with Selivinka apparently captured, although probably other areas have been overrun as well, though there's still small areas of Ukrainian resistance. Fighting Orgiev has resumed, and as you can see on the battlefield on closer, there are many areas that Russia has hit, far more than usually in the past. Krevigi, as I said, for some time had been left alone, and I was wondering, yesterday did speculate that it was on purpose, and obviously when the build-up came, Russia has hit it. Same with Mirgorod and the usual attacks on Odessa. Of course, that's not to say Ukraine hasn't conducted missile strikes, but Kursk, nothing in Crimea, not for the lack of trying, but FSB has made arrests. Ukrainians have started to suffer losses, and drone attacks are getting infrequent. This, of course, could be a build-up in shifted technologies and Ukraine running out their stock. We don't know. We'll see. We don't know. There was supposed to be an announcement this week, although it's only just started. It's Monday in Ukraine, coming to an... But Zelensky has been invited to Moscow, and for a week, Zelensky has resisted talking until he gets his security guarantees. So hopefully there'll be more about that soon. I'll get to the rest of the stories before commenting further on the security guarantees. However, today's losses are more than yesterday's, up 200. Most of these, of course, in various areas of responsibilities with 400 in the center. That is, the center is here. Now, Zelensky, of course, is very disrespectful. He's mouthing off. The coward of Kiev, of course, is cowering in his bunker and giving the middle finger because my free speech, which of course he engages routinely in lying, and unfortunately the majority lap it up. But the majority is shrinking. Now, more and more Americans are saying, fuck Ukraine. But the coward of Kiev has accused Trump of playing games, or that Moscow's playing games and has hoodwinked Trump. More like Zelensky's upset that he can't control Trump like he did with Biden. Or this is the problem, okay? Every world leader is who says, I'm going to stand up to power, man. I'm going to speak truth to power, man. No, you're not. You're a coward. You're sniping at somebody who'll just merely say mean words back at you, okay? The worst you can fear from Trump is mean words. Unless you're Maduro. But Trump is not the kind of guy who sets out to wipe out the opposition. He's trying to squeeze out, Vladimir Zelensky, Obama would have actually never put up with this shit. And maybe... But the thing is, the people who are praising Obama are saying that Trump's been too hard on Zelensky and it's got to listen to reason and you have to listen to others. All this humiliation that the left love to engage in to show how virtuous they are. And that's garbage, okay? That goes against the principles of free will. But of course, you don't believe in free will, you believe in obedience to your ideology. Now, though the allegation is, and this is actually RT speaking, that produced no breakthroughs, both sides have described as a positive step, that Ukraine was not there, think that President Trump gave Putin what he wanted, said Zelensky. Of course, he's talking to ABC, Martha Ratchett, who won't push back against the little turd, who basically thinks that I have Europe at my back, I don't need the United States. And meanwhile, the United States is saying, please, America, give us a discount on all these weapons. And Trump says, yeah, we'll give you mates rates, and we don't care if you give them to Ukraine, but not money. We're not giving you loans. We're not giving you freebies. No more USA. No more backdoor loans. No more, because they all know, right? So they all know, and I think a lot of you know how many wars reach a certain point, known as the peak, and then they'll spend another year and a half, like they did in Korea, or I forget how many years in Vietnam. I think Nixon also gave them an extra year. But keep going around the fact that no matter what you do, it's over. All right? Now, we're not talking about the capitulation of Ukraine. We're talking about the fact that Russia is not making any concerted efforts to conquer Ukraine. After a year, if you've only taken, you've gone from 18 to 20% after a year, you're not out to conquer a country. Okay? They're not moving in 1 million troops to occupy this territory. They're moving, People, however, want to be... The saying is simple. Weak people are immature. Weak people are emotional. Emotional people are immature. immature, hyperbolic. It's always the end of the world with them. And they want someone else to suffer so that they can feel better. But yes, Trump will speak with Putin soon. Now, this was, let's see. 2 hours ago. So Trump has probably spoken to Putin by now. When Trump says within a few days, we know he means within a few hours. But what he means by saying in a few days, it's actually not one phone call, okay? There's a phone call to make a phone call, and then people gather around their phones. Putin will sit there before his screen, and everybody go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Cameras go on. They make a quick hello, yes, 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 yes. Got your message. Thank you. Bye. And then, since the cameras are off, they're all talking. Okay? It's actually, the advisors are saying, right, my counterpart gave me this, my counterpart gave me this. The intelligence guy says, oh, we confirm this, this, and this. That's how it really goes, okay? Most of the time, a president is PR. He delegates to the board. In America, you have layers. You have the presidential advisors, you have the cabinet, and you have the intelligence agencies. Russia has a similar setup. However, Russia puts it into one room, the Russian Security Council. In America, you have, they're separate. You have the NSA, the Pentagon. You have a lot more bureaucracy in America than you do in Russia. And then, of course, you add to this European leaders. Trump saying he's not thrilled. He's going to get it settled. Adding that several European leaders are scheduled to visit Monday, Tuesday to discuss. So that's his way of saying, look, I'm talking to the people who are in the way. If he was talking to Putin first, that means Putin's in the way. You're always going to approach this as a business deal, not as some childish game of, where you get tough guy pushing, the tough guy push and pull of the high school locker room. The problem is liberals think they're in a high school. They haven't matured past high school. So everything has to be, button up, I owned you. I burnt you good, man. I called you a bad name. I said you were dumb. You're Orange Man bad. So you now have to say, oh, you owned me, man. Oh, you got me, man. They treat it like, what's it called? A rap battle, The cheering audience, democratization. This childish mentality of mob rule. But of course, peace in Ukraine would be far easier if it wasn't for the porks in Brussels fueling Little Man. But Little Man is getting lectured that he has to accept the realities on the battlefield, but this little prick just keeps saying, no. You have to push out Russia, then we can talk peace. So, who's the obstacle? Is it Putin? No, of course the liberals would say it's Putin. He has to win war and pay. He has to pay reparations. Yeah, where's our $47 billion for stolen bicycles? Oh, those carjackings. You're gonna. Are those? Is the community going to pay wrongful death suit for the blonde-haired, blue-eyed white girl who got murdered for being a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white girl in America, for the Ukrainian refugee? Hey, is the community, is the hoodlums going to pay reparations for that murder, for wrongful death? So, why do we have the sins of our past? Why does Ukraine get to have a toxic relationship with Russia? I get Russia wants nothing to do with Ukraine. I get it. At the same time, they don't want Europe to come in and put weapons in Ukraine. How hard is that? How hard is it to say, yeah, let's not escalate? No. Because Keir Starmer and Macron are full of shit. I don't like Rutte, but he might actually be genuine. He might actually accept that we're not getting our way and that Russia isn't getting their way. But Zelensky, he just can't accept that he just can't accept that he is a liar. Right? He lied about making peace with Russia. He lied about upholding the Minsk Accords. And he lied about the shelling of Donetsk, which has left now 1.5 million Ukrainians dead, 10.7 million Ukrainians displaced, and his country probably economically set back 100 years. And that's without the damage done by Russia. That's just the damage done by his madness of going to war and perpetuating a war that had already been going on for a decade. Well, almost a decade. The Donbass war started in 2014 with the Ukrainian security forces along with militias, murdering people for protesting, which led to the Russians in Crimea throwing out the Ukrainian authorities and Moscow moving in. You could say it was all orchestrated. Well, isn't that what America did in 2014 when they instigated the coup in the first place? And now it's revealed that they kicked out the leader in 2014, not because he was pro-Russian, but because he wasn't moving fast enough. They were impatient. They wanted somebody who would bring immediate results. The guy had only been in office. He only just won the election a short time ago, and they weren't happy. This is ridiculous. This was open society. Said, he wasn't reliable, a reliable partner. We feared he would return to siding with Russia after he won the election. No, he only went to Russia because you threatened to kill him. This is the problem with ideology. You're treating it like a religion. You're holding up this false idol called liberal democracy. The freedom to create should not give you also the freedom to basically run around stabbing girls in the neck and then saying, "Oh, you can't jail me. I'm a homeless drug addict. It's my daddy's fault. It's society's fault." And have all these do-gooders, which most people don't understand. All these do-gooders are bleating to make you give in to them and give them money to fix the problems that they create. That's what diplomats do. They create all these problems behind the scenes. They destabilized Ukraine, and now they don't know how to get out of it because Russia won't withdraw. Well, too bad, so sad. That's how war works. It's like, you haven't asked China to withdraw from Tibet lately. Hey? So thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. And please support the channel. You can support me on Patreon. Buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree. You support free speech, or do you support speech that you like? Anyhow, all my links are in the link tree. And you can scan the QR code on the screen right now. Thank you. See you in the next video. Bye for now.